country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid. And then there's abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up.
It's been almost a year since Bill Maher kicked off his full-blown war on the woke crowd. And make no mistake, he's nowhere near slowing down. His latest target? None other than Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who's been zigzagging across the country like a woke GPS, spreading her progressive message to anyone who will listen. But Maher? Yeah, he's not buying a word of it. As always, hit that subscribe button and let's dive in.
See a new poll reporting how much Latinos despise the woke term Latinx. It's about as popular with them as a reboot of Speedy Gonzales. Even the country's oldest Latino civil rights group came out against it, yet AOC keeps defending it, saying gender is fluid, language is fluid. Yes, and Latino voters are fluid.
Here's how it all started. Maher did what he does best, asking the uncomfortable questions no one else wants to touch. This time, he zeroed in on AOC and her nonstop push for a far-left agenda that, frankly, more and more everyday Americans are rejecting. Maher wondered out loud why she keeps doubling down on a political philosophy so many voters now see as toxic, divisive, and completely out of touch. Most politicians would pause, reassess, maybe even pivot, but not AOC. She's convinced she owns the moral high ground and seems perfectly comfortable forcing her worldview on the rest of the country. And that's when Maher shifted gears. What followed wasn't just criticism, it was a calculated takedown. A verbal demolition with no room for spin, no TikTok cleanup, and no escape hatch. Buckle up, because this is where it gets brutal.
Abortion. A difficult issue for the Democrats to lose on, but they're trying. For decades, liberals have said if only men could get pregnant, this wouldn't even be an issue. And abortion rights are women's rights. Well, that's wrong now. Or as the kids say, hold up. When the wokey end of the progressive spectrum talks about abortion now, they shy away from that word, women, and prefer terms like birthing people or people who menstruate, because somewhere there's a trans man who's pregnant, and I say good for him, and I'll be looking for his story somewhere in a future issue of Ripley's Believe It or Not.
And that, right there, is the hill Democrats chose to die on. The inability to define what a woman is. 10 years ago, this wasn't even a debate. Everyone understood it. Biology mattered. Women menstruate, get pregnant, and give birth. Simple. Then came the progressive rebrand. Suddenly, men could be women. Gender became fluid, and questioning any of it got you labeled a bigot. But most Americans didn't buy it. They pushed back with honest questions and were met with lectures, cancellations, and smug condescension from ivory towers and blue state bubbles. While the left doubled down, the rest of the country quietly walked away. The result? One of the most crushing electoral defeats Democrats have seen in recent memory. Not because voters were hateful, but because they were tired of being told reality was offensive. The party didn't just lose votes, it lost trust.
More of them now than ever are identifying as Republican. So are Asian Americans, whose support for Democrats is down 16 points since the last election. A lot of that is because, in the name of achieving equity in schools, Democrats in deep blue cities have made it a mission to eliminate the advanced programs at which Asian kids excel. Asian parents said, okay, I wish all kids well, not a racist, but I need someone who acts like my lawyer.
That's what happens when you keep shoving people into a corner. Eventually, they push back, and not in the way you expect. AOC and her party strutted through deep blue states like they had a political blank check. Untouchable. Unquestionable. They assumed their base would follow them off any ideological cliff. They were wrong. What they didn't see coming was the quiet rebellion. Voters who once cheered flipped almost overnight. And where did they go? Straight to the Republicans, the very people AOC spent years demonizing. This wasn't gradual. It was seismic. Former allies became skeptics. Once safe Democratic strongholds started cracking wide open. So now the question looms. Is this just a speed bump for AOC, or the beginning of a political earthquake? And when Maher mutters, my lawyer, it might just be checkmate.
85% Latino congressional district on the border with Mexico, which had always voted heavily Democratic, flipped to the red team. And the campaign manager for the losing Democrat said, we gave up a reliably Democratic congressional seat for no reason at all. We deserve to know why. Well, aside from your terrible attitude, I'm going to tell you why. Because these voters stopped seeing your candidate as their lawyer.
If you're wondering why Maher keeps tossing around phrases like my lawyer and their lawyer, relax. It's not courtroom drama. It's political theater with a point. Voters expect their elected officials to act as their advocates, their defenders. In other words, our lawyer, not the opposition's but. AOC and her progressive allies missed that memo. Instead of fighting for voters, they've been lecturing them, scolding them, and pushing agendas that leave people asking, whose side are you on? Maher doesn't just point it out. He builds the case piece by piece. The irony? AOC talks like she's defending the underdog. But in the court of public opinion, she's starting to look more like the defendant. And when Maher delivers his closing argument, it won't be gentle.
Parent and wanted schools to reopen a lot sooner than they did after COVID shutdowns, or think maybe your kid is getting a bad education, partly because it's nearly impossible to fire a lousy teacher? Yeah, you're going to say, congratulations, teachers, you got yourself a good lawyer. The Democratic Party's always got your back, 100%. But I've noticed my kid is kind of an idiot. So I may be looking for new representation.
And it wasn't just Latino voters the progressive wing managed to alienate. They also set fire to something even more sacred: education. A few years back, the Biden administration, cheered on by the far left, pushed policies that made it much harder to fire underperforming teachers. It sounded compassionate on paper. In practice, it crippled school systems nationwide. The results were disastrous. According to the nation's report card, average math scores for 13-year-olds dropped 9 points between 2020 and 2023, the largest decline in 50 years. Reading scores fell 4 points. Meanwhile, failing teachers were protected like national assets. So, while AOC chants slogans and Bernie Sanders dusts off the same old class warfare, parents are staring at report cards, wondering what went wrong. This wasn't a small mistake. It was a generational failure. Which raises the real question: does a Sanders-AOC ticket actually help Democrats reclaim power, or does it just drag the party deeper into academic and electoral detention?
Biden wants to cancel hundreds of billions of dollars in student debt. Okay, but the poorer 2/3 of American kids who don't get a college degree are going to say, why should the people who didn't go to college and make less money subsidize the people who did go and make more? You want me to chip in so some liberal arts college can build a bigger rock wall? You're not my lawyer. A universal basic income probably sounds pretty good to a lot of people struggling without a college degree. And a number of cities have been running pilot programs in guaranteed income. But the West Hollywood program had to be suspended because it was unconstitutional. They set up a program where 25 residents were to get $1,000 for 18 months, but only a few identified as LGBT, the rest of that. Why? Because they need money more than any other people? Because no one in West Hollywood will hire a gay person?
Sometimes, when you step back and really look at the policies Democrats tried to push and failed at spectacularly, it's hard not to laugh. Not at small hiccups, but at full-blown policy faceplants. Take defund the police. That worked great until crime exploded and even its loudest supporters started quietly backing away, or the rent cancellation fantasy that sounded amazing in a college dorm but collapsed under basic economics. Or eliminating standardized testing because accountability is now considered oppressive. As Maher might put it, it's like Democrats are playing how to lose the middle in 10 easy steps, and they're undefeated. And yet, these same people think they deserve another shot at running the country.
In 2020, Bernie Sanders said he would legalize marijuana on his first day as president, but that the business of selling pot would be awarded first to those who suffered most from the drug war. And you know what? I can't argue with that instinct. The drug war has been a horrendous instrument of prejudice and punishment for racial minorities. So it seems fair that they jump the line for weed franchises the way Indians did for casinos. But it's also what's holding up Republican support for legalizing weed nationally, which would be good for everybody. And these are the hard, practical choices that Democrats have to weigh. Redress the past, or reach out to the gettable white voter who says, you know what, I'd like a shot at getting in the pot business. But to do that, our entire audience. But to do that, I'm going to need a good lawyer who fights for me.
Maher makes a razor-sharp point here, and it deserves real attention. If Democrats want any chance of clawing their way back to power, they have to do more than tweet slogans and ride moral high horses. They need to confront their mistakes, honest. And here's the radical idea. Actually talk to the people they ignored. Not talk at them. Not guess their problems from an air-conditioned office in DC. Sit down, listen, and shut up. Because assuming what voters need based on polls and think tanks is exactly how they lost them. Morrow isn't saying sell out. He's saying reconnect, rebuild trust. Otherwise, they're just yelling into an echo chamber while the voters they need most have already walked out the door.
These issues, the wavering voter is saying to her lawyer, the Democratic Party, hey, so happy for you that you have so many other clients and that you care so much about their problems and all the pro bono work you do. But you're supposed to be my lawyer. The Democrats need to be like the lawyers you see on billboards. You hurt, we fight.
In the end, Bill Maher didn't just roast Democrats. He held up a mirror. From redefining basic truths to ignoring voters, the party has drifted so far off course, it barely recognizes the people it claims to represent. Behind the punchlines are real failures in policy, communication, and plain common sense. If Democrats want redemption, it won't come from doubling down on delusion. It will come from listening, adjusting, and reconnecting with reality. Because if they don't, voters won't just walk away, they'll slam the door behind them. And that's where we'll wrap today's video.